The warm morning sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the corporate headquarters, making everything inside sparkle with success. Employees rushed through the lobby carrying files, answering calls, and chasing deadlines, but no one noticed the quiet man standing near the reception desk with a little girl holding tightly onto his hand. He looked ordinary, tired, and slightly nervous, yet within the next few minutes, a single unexpected sentence would change not only his life but also the heart of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. What started as a simple joke from a struggling single father became the beginning of a story that reminded everyone that money can build houses, but only love can build a family. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, second chances, and genuine love can change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Vault so you never miss another heart-touching story. Arlen Mercer had never imagined that life would become so heavy before he turned 35. Every morning began before sunrise, not because he enjoyed waking up early, but because responsibility refused to sleep. He prepared breakfast, packed school lunches, braided his 6-year-old daughter Maris's long hair as best as he could despite never learning how, washed dishes, cleaned their tiny apartment, and then hurried to work. Every movement was filled with love, but also exhaustion. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, every day had become a balancing act between earning enough money and giving his daughter enough attention to grow up feeling loved. Maris never complained. She smiled even when breakfast was simple toast with homemade jam. She laughed when her father's uneven braids made her classmates giggle. She proudly told everyone that her dad tried harder than anyone else in the world. Those innocent words became the fuel that kept Arlen moving through endless workdays and sleepless nights. That particular morning, the babysitter had cancelled without warning. The school was opening 2 hours later because of a maintenance issue, and Arlen had no relatives nearby. Missing work was impossible because the company was preparing for its biggest client presentation of the year. With no other choice, he brought Maris with him, hoping she would quietly color in the employee lounge until school opened. The company where Arlen worked was known for its demanding standards. At the top stood the respected CEO, Cedric Rowan, a man admired for his brilliant business decisions but often described as emotionally distant. Newspapers praised his achievements, investors trusted his judgment, and competitors feared his confidence. Yet behind the expensive suits and polished speeches was a lonely man who spent more evenings in empty luxury than with people who genuinely cared about him. As Arlen hurried through the lobby, Maris became fascinated by the enormous indoor fountain. She watched the sunlight dance across the water while tiny rainbows appeared on the marble floor. At that same moment, Cedric walked in surrounded by executives discussing contracts worth millions. Everyone immediately stepped aside. Arlen politely apologized for being in the way while gently guiding his daughter closer. Cedric unexpectedly slowed down after noticing the little girl smiling brightly at her father. She reached up, straightened his slightly crooked tie, and proudly brushed invisible dust from his jacket before giving him the biggest grin imaginable. The simple gesture stopped Cedric for reasons he could not explain. It reminded him of childhood mornings before ambition had replaced warmth. Without thinking much, Cedric quietly remarked that he wished he had a happy family like theirs. Arlen, believing the comment was nothing more than casual conversation, smiled with tired honesty and jokingly replied that his kid needed a mom. The words were spoken lightly, almost playfully, yet they landed inside Cedric's heart with unexpected weight. For the rest of the morning, Cedric found himself unable to focus entirely on financial reports. His thoughts kept returning to the father whose smile hid deep exhaustion and to the child who carried happiness despite having so little. During lunch, curiosity led him to quietly review Arlen's employee records. He discovered years of perfect attendance, excellent performance, and almost no vacation days. He also learned that Arlen had repeatedly declined promotions because higher positions demanded more travel away from his daughter. That discovery stayed with Cedric throughout the afternoon. He realized that while he had built an empire by sacrificing relationships, another man had sacrificed career opportunities to protect the most precious relationship in his life. One possessed unlimited wealth without companionship, while the other possessed endless love despite constant financial struggle. Over the following weeks, Cedric began observing more carefully. He noticed Arlen eating inexpensive homemade lunches while saving money for Maris's music lessons. He noticed him staying late only after arranging safe childcare. He noticed that every decision in the father's life revolved around giving his daughter opportunities he never had himself. Meanwhile, Maris slowly became familiar with the office whenever unusual situations forced her father to bring her along for short periods. Employees adored her cheerful personality. She drew colorful pictures for everyone and somehow remembered every person's birthday. The once serious office gradually became brighter whenever she visited. One afternoon, Cedric found a folded drawing left accidentally in the conference room. It showed a tiny apartment beneath a bright blue sky. Standing outside were two smiling stick figures holding hands. Above them was written in large colorful letters that home was wherever Dad was. There were no expensive cars, no giant mansion, and no fancy vacations. There was only love. Cedric carefully placed the drawing inside his office drawer instead of throwing it away. That evening, he stared out across the city skyline from his penthouse apartment. Thousands of lights filled the streets below, yet silence echoed through every luxurious room. Awards covered his shelves, but there were no family photographs beside them. The success everyone envied suddenly felt strangely empty. Days later, Cedric quietly invited Arlen to lunch under the excuse of discussing future projects. During their conversation, he learned about the late-night hospital visits, the endless medical bills, the heartbreak of saying goodbye to the woman who had once dreamed of raising Maris together, and the promise Arlen made at her bedside that their daughter would always know unconditional love. Cedric listened more than he spoke. For perhaps the first time in years, he was hearing a story that money could never rewrite. Every sacrifice Arlen described reminded him of everything he himself had postponed until someday. Birthdays had become meetings. Friendships had become networking opportunities. Love had become another appointment that never fit into the calendar. Inspired by what he had witnessed, Cedric quietly began changing company policies. Flexible working hours were introduced for parents. Emergency childcare assistance became available for employees. Family wellness days replaced several unnecessary corporate events. Productivity surprisingly increased because workers finally felt valued as people instead of numbers. Arlen never asked for special treatment. He simply appreciated that he could attend Maris's school performances without fearing disciplinary action. For the first time in years, he watched his daughter perform on stage under the bright afternoon sun instead of hearing about it afterward from teachers. Months passed, and the office atmosphere transformed. Employees laughed more. Families occasionally visited during community events. Cedric attended these gatherings not as a distant executive but as someone genuinely trying to understand the lives of the people who helped build the company. During one charity event held in a neighborhood park on a beautiful sunny Saturday, Maris ran toward Cedric carrying a handmade friendship bracelet woven from colorful threads. She happily tied it around his wrist before running off to play with other children. The bracelet cost almost nothing, yet Cedric treasured it more than many expensive gifts he had received throughout his career. That evening, he realized something remarkable. The lonely feeling that had followed him for years had begun fading, not because he had purchased something new, but because he had finally allowed kindness into his carefully protected world. As time continued moving forward, Arlen received a promotion that allowed him to lead an important department without sacrificing time with Maris. His dedication, honesty, and compassion had earned the respect of everyone around him. More importantly, he remained the same humble father who never forgot that his greatest achievement waited for him every afternoon outside the school gates. Maris grew happier knowing her father smiled more often. The apartment still wasn't luxurious, but laughter echoed through every room. Weekend breakfasts became small celebrations filled with pancakes, music, and dreams about the future. Hope slowly replaced grief. Cedric also began rebuilding his personal life. He reconnected with his elderly parents after years of emotional distance. He accepted invitations from old friends he had ignored for too long. Most importantly, he stopped believing that vulnerability was weakness. Watching one devoted father love his daughter had quietly taught him that the richest people are not those who own the most, but those who are surrounded by people who genuinely care whether they come home at night. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Vault for more emotional stories filled with hope and kindness. As another bright morning arrived months later, Cedric stood once again in the company lobby where everything had started. Employees walked past smiling, parents greeted one another, and children visiting for family day filled the building with joyful laughter. Arlen entered holding Maris's hand just as he had on that unforgettable morning. This time, however, there was no exhaustion hiding behind his smile. There was peace. Special request: before this story ends, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and share one act of kindness that changed your life. Your story may inspire someone who needs hope today. Sometimes life changes because of a billion-dollar business decision. Sometimes it changes because of a child straightening her father's tie. One lonely CEO discovered that success without love feels empty, and one hardworking single father discovered that quiet kindness can inspire change far beyond anything he imagined. Their paths crossed for only a moment, but that single heartfelt exchange created a future filled with compassion, stronger families, and renewed hope. In the end, the greatest gift was never wealth, promotions, or recognition. It was the realization that every act of love, no matter how small, has the power to heal hearts, restore faith, and remind us that family is not measured by perfection but by the people who choose one another every single day.